League of Legends is one of the most popular games to ever exist and has without a doubt made a remarkable impact on both esports and gaming in general. League of Legends has been out for nearly 10 years and is still going strong today. However, in the last few years, many others, along with myself, have started to feel more and more hatred towards League. There are many reasons people have grown tired or angry at League of Legends, with a few examples being Riot and their balancing team, issues with ranked and MMR, and just general toxicity in the game. I won't go into the validity of these arguments, but most people who have played this game for a long time have started to become jaded towards League of Legends for one reason or another. I personally just took my longest break from the game that I have ever taken, and yet I found myself right back where I started, playing League of Legends. Recently, on one of my streams, I had a viewer start watching whom had never played a game of League before, and was asking me all sorts of questions about what champions are fun, what role to play, and what I like about the game. At first I didn't know what to say, because the words fun and like are not words I have used to describe League of Legends in a long time. That got me thinking as to why I even started playing this game in the first place, and why, like many others, I have not been able to completely walk away from the game after all these years. Due to that question, I've decided I want to take a look back at what I loved about the game when I first started playing, and why I believe longtime players start to fall out of love for League of Legends. When I was 14 years old, I was playing World of Warcraft as my one and only game. This was the first computer game I ever played that I was able to tap into my competitive fire and work towards becoming one of the best. However, it wasn't long before a lot of my friends started picking up an even more popular game at the time, which of course was League of Legends. At the time, the only thing I knew about League is that my older brother quit WoW to play it, and a lot of my WoW friends were slowly starting to put more time into League. I was so adamant that I wasn't going to like it, that when I finally got peer pressured into making an account, I searched into my 14-year-old brain and named myself Pink Punisher 69. I'm ashamed to admit it, but the truth is that I didn't take League seriously and had no clue how long I was going to be playing it for. After a couple of days playing League of Legends, I started to realize that it was the only thing I was thinking about and pretty much the only thing that I wanted to do. I started thinking about League when I was at school, when I was playing WoW, and I honestly had some pretty vivid League of Legends related dreams that I remember to this day. Luckily, most of my friends completely left WoW for League, so I was ready to fully commit to my new love. Honestly, just thinking back to the first few years of playing League just brings a smile to my face. I remember my sense of wonder regarding every champion and how I used to list out my top 5 characters that I wanted to buy. Everything was so new and exciting. I wasn't good at the game yet, but I was okay with that. I was just okay with experiencing it all. I remember before I was even level 30, I would ask my dad if I could buy some RP and get this new champ that I thought was cool, or purchase this Jedi skin for Master Yi, who by the way was my favorite champion at the time. Honestly, experiencing and learning all these new characters, along with playing with all my friends, has to be some of my favorite video game memories of all time. When I hit level 30, I decided I wanted to try and play ranked. So I went ahead and did my placements. My brother was gold at the time, and he was the best player I knew. So when I hit silver, after expecting to be placed bronze, a spark was lit in my heart, and oh baby, was I hooked. 1 week after I hit silver, World Season 4 started, and my brother convinced me to watch it. I barely knew anything about the League Pro scene before this, and just for context, I have almost never enjoyed watching traditional sports in any form, so I initially figured I would have the same inclination towards Pro League. But I was so wrong. I saw some of the most incredible plays I had ever seen and witnessed a level of play I, as a new player, just couldn't even believe. Not only did I fall in love with League esports, but I felt this surge within me that pushed me to want to be a better player. Fast forward 2 years later, I hit Diamond for the first time, and I have to tell you, as sad as it might seem, it was one of the happiest and most cathartic moments in my entire life. Up until this point, League was one of the best things I had going for me, and no matter how hard things got outside of the game, I always had this love and passion for getting better that kept me coming back. Now that is my story, and even though there is more story to tell, I'm sure there are plenty of people watching whom resonated with that story in one way or another. However, today I rarely ever feel these same feelings. I find myself struggling to have the passion I once did, and when I do find a glimmer of love for the game, it's only temporary. So the question now is, what happened? I think it is pretty safe to assume that the majority of us once really liked or potentially even loved League of Legends, especially if you are still currently playing or have played for many years. When you first start playing a game that you really enjoy, you don't see any of its flaws because there is so much more to learn and pay attention to that isn't the negatives. However, with a game like League, and most competitive games in general, the idea of falling out of love with a game is pretty consistent throughout. When we first started playing League, we were learning the new champs, playing with our friends, and learning new things every day. Despite these things, most players reach a point where they desire something more, and that is to quote-unquote actually become good at the game. For me, the first 2 seasons of Ranked were perfectly fine, and I still very much enjoyed the game. I still loved the game as much as I always did, and I could see myself getting better and better every day to the point where I thought the sky was the limit. However, looking back on the feelings I felt when I finally reached Diamond for the very first time, I now realize that was the peak of my League of Legends experience. I have been playing League for 3.5 years since I first got Diamond, and I've never been able to reach that next milestone or recapture the feeling of catharsis that I had felt in that moment. What I have realized after all this time is that once a player reaches their peak in a competitive game, the game begins to lose its value to you. Once a player no longer feels like they are improving and that climbing to the next milestone might be out of reach, the game turns from a fun and competitively stimulating experience to just simply frustrating. When the game turns from fun to frustrating, a lot of things may start happening. You may start noticing flaws in the company's system and how they run the game, find common complaints in the people you play with or the characters you face, or perhaps find frustration at yourself that you can no longer push any farther. However, the reality is that these complaints and issues were always there from the start, but we as players overlooked these problems because we were enthralled by the things in the game that made us happy. A good analogy to traditional sports comes from a common consensus with professional athletes in that most athletes go into the game loving every aspect of it, but as the business and political side of things start taking over, they find themselves loving the game less than they used to. The reason for this is because we allow our perspectives of the things that we love to become tainted once we face opposition that directly impacts that which we care for. Over time, in a competitive game, we put forth so much effort into becoming better and struggling to reach our goals that at some point we forget what even has kept us playing for this long. In a sense, we lose our way and allow our perception of the game to become jaded to the point where we look back and struggle to remember what we loved about the game in the first place. With League in particular, I know for a fact that there are a lot of decisions and major issues that have led to the frustrations of a majority of the player base. However, I think we forget that there have always been problems and there will always be problems. But what has changed significantly more than the game itself is our perception. As Alan Moore wrote in his book V for Vendetta, if you are looking for the guilty, you need only look in the mirror. I do not know if it is possible to regain the love for the game we once had once it is gone. I know that if I was ever to personally reach the next milestone, which is Master Tier, I probably wouldn't feel as happy as I did when I first reached Diamond. I do think, however, there is a way to approach the game in a more positive sense and recapture some of the joy it once brought you. I think learning to have fun with the game again all comes down to your willingness to overlook the negative aspects of the game and shift your perspective a little bit. Now, after all that talk of why we may have lost our passion for the game, I want to answer the question of whether or not a new player should get into League of Legends. You might be surprised by how many players would recommend not to, simply because they feel like the game is not as good or as fun as it used to be. But if we all remember what it was like for us to first start playing League and all the wonderful memories that we made in the start, it would be a shame to rob anyone of the same experiences. I personally would not trade any of the good times playing League for anything. And despite all the stress and frustration the game has given me over the years, I will always look back on League of Legends with fond memories. Even if you have already quit League due to the fact that you fell out of love with the game and you ended on a bad note, just remember this. It is not the end which defines the journey. It is the journey which defines the end.